Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten and Adam Nathan here with you to discuss another home Seahawks defeat. They're 3-6 at Lumen Field. Just wanted to start off with this, Adam. That should be an embarrassment to the franchise. You know, everybody associated with the team, from ownership to the GM to the head coach to the players, should be highly embarrassed that the Seahawks have lost 6 of 9 home games this year. And the fact that they've won as many games as they have on the road should be the precursor to a fantastic season. So to lose 6 games at home is unacceptable. It should be seen as an embarrassment. They have to wear it. They should talk about it as if it's a total embarrassment. They shouldn't just wash that away. They are now 16-18 at home since the fans returned to the stadium after COVID. That's a joke. The franchise needs to take this seriously. It's not just about the tickets, by the way. And everyone's kind of got caught up in like, oh, whether you can blame fans or not blame fans for that this week. The Seahawks as a franchise has to have a look at why they are so bad at home. So that's the first thing that I have to say, because that's another home loss. The second thing I wanted to get into today, Adam, is that offense. What the play calling today is absolutely unbelievable. There was one point in the game where I think they'd thrown it something like 33 times and they'd run it about 6 times at 4.5 yards a carry on a wet day in Lumen Field in a one-score game, Adam. How can that possibly be the case? How are you running the ball as little as they are when the head coach constantly says he wants to run the ball? I was not that bothered who the offensive coordinator was, as long as it had a functioning offense. And I didn't have a problem with them hiring Ryan Grubb. What the heck? They didn't have a great pool to choose from. So I'm not going to sit here and revise history of my own opinion, Adam, and say that I had a problem with them hiring Ryan Grubb. But I'm going to check today. I am going to say, what on earth were they bloody thinking, hiring someone who'd never coached in the NFL before to be the offensive coordinator to a head coach who's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL himself for 2 years, who had no experience? They needed an experienced NFL play caller alongside this head coach. And that play calling today was abysmal. That was an embarrassment as well. It's cost them a chance of winning. It's ludicrous what I've just watched on offense, and Ryan Grubb will not be the offensive coordinator next year. I'm telling you now. And quite frankly, Adam, if they told me tomorrow that they were giving Jake Pete to go for the last 2 games on a trial period, I wouldn't care less. That was not good enough.
If I can just try and go Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game and deflate the ball a little bit and just take the sting out of it a ton of it. If you are, I reckon you're at like an 8.5 out of 10. Right now. And I don't know if the listeners or viewers know that you've just been broadcasting to the nation trying to watch this game. Roughly what level out of 10 do you think you were trying to watch the Seahawks game and talk to millions of people in the UK on the radio?
Well, as a consummate professional, Adam, I was probably at a 1 because I was very, very calm and composed and playing it straight down the middle. But that's why this stream is great, because it gives me an opportunity to sort of let a few things off my chest afterwards. And 100%. Having watched that, I just couldn't believe what I was watching, Adam. Like, the fact that like everyone will talk about. I had a brief glance on Twitter when they did the fake punt, and I was going, "Yeah, fake punt, well done, fake punt, amazing." I'm thinking, why do you need to do a fake punt on 4th and 1 in midfield in a 1-score game? What? And it's raining. You've hired a Harbaugh disciple to come and coach your football team. He spends every week, 1, saying he wants to run the ball, and 2, after the game, when they don't run the ball, he says we should run the ball more. And listen, Mike McDonald bears some responsibility for this. He's not completely out. It's his team at the end of the day. It's his team. So he has to take control of this. But how can you have a game in those weather conditions, in that kind of close game, and you have no balance whatsoever? Like, it's all on the passing game. It's just all on Geno Smith. It's all on the receivers. It's all on the offensive linemen to pass block. And they were running at 4.5 yards a carry with like 6 carries well into the second half. Like, if they were running for 1 yard a carry, Adam, I could understand it. How can you be running for 4.5 yards a carry on like 6 carries and not be running it at all? And then you look at the Vikings, like, wow, they didn't exactly run it down Seattle's throat today, but they had a balanced attack. They took a little bit of pressure off Sam Darnold as a consequence. Sam Darnold, all he had to do today was point guard the crap out of that game.
Yeah.
And he did very, very well. But for Seattle, it's like, do you know what? There was a point in the broadcast when, sorry that I'm going on. There was a point in the broadcast where I said, what tends to happen is Seattle don't run the ball at all. And then they remember that they decided they were going to run the ball before the game. And then they'll have like a sequence where they force the run. And then after I said that, they proceeded to pass the ball 9 times. They had a fake punt and 1 run. And then I think they punted it back to the other team, or they kicked a field goal, whatever it was. Like, how can you have a sequence like that in a 1-score game when it's pissing it down in Seattle? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me, Adam. This is not how you play NFL football. I don't think Grubb is ready to be an NFL offensive coordinator. I know I will own the fact that I did not have a problem with them hiring Ryan Grubb. It was more out of curiosity than expectation, though. It was not about this guy's going to be great. It was more about, I'm curious to see how this is going to finish. But now when I look back on it, after watching that, and it's not just a knee-jerk reaction to that, we've been talking about this for weeks. How on earth did they appoint someone who'd never coached in the NFL before to run their offense when they appointed a defensive-minded head coach? It's a total nonsense that I'm afraid to say John Schneider and Mike McDonald, with hindsight, have to own that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I texted someone at the game saying that Grubb was calling plays as if like he'd been told he was going to get fired and was just like getting stuff off his chest, or like updating his CV and just showing other people the type of plays he can run. Because some of it was just astonishing. I mean, you're so right to say that, to need a fake punt on 4th and 1 when you pass on 3rd and 1, like, maybe not don't go conventional wisdom every time, right? But if you're going to go for it on 4th, the convention would be, well, we'll run on 3rd because we've given ourselves 2 chances. But the play they threw, it wasn't even like a low percent, a high percentage play. There's nothing but the passing. There's not even a lot of it's not even a lot of screens or dump offs or check downs that high percentage. It all seems to be get a chunk, get a chunk, get a chunk. And it's like a kid playing Madden at some point. And you'd love it. You'd love to play a computer game like that and transpose that into real life. But, you're playing against other grown men here, and Brian Flores, one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, he must have been laughing himself silly. Now, yeah, we did get up quite a few yards in the game, but even with that, I would still think they would be very happy with how we came into the game with our plan, because even the odd time where we suggested to run with Ken McIntosh, it did open things up in the pass game much more, and everything felt less forced. And yeah, I mean, we're hardly, this isn't kind of reactionary behavior here from us. I think we've discussed for a number of weeks now the question marks over Grubb and his performances, and it just doesn't look right, does it? Like, when you sit down and you watch a game in the NFL, you kind of know what looks right and what doesn't feel quite right. And this just doesn't feel like it's coherent and that it's befitting a team who are trying to get in the playoffs. I mean, that's pretty much done now, unfortunately, but it's just a shame.
I'm sick of the excuses as well. Like, there's an excuse for everything. There's an excuse for, Ryan Grubb can't do this. He can't do anything because the O-line's not good enough. Come on, man. Like, there are offensive lines out there that are as bad as Seattle's, believe it or not. Some may be even worse, and some will be marginally better, but still not good enough to not be a liability. And people will go, Grubb can't run the ball because of the offensive line. It was 4.5 yards a carry on the 6 carries that they actually had in the third quarter. Like, there's always an excuse for something. Like, you can't judge Grubb because of the offensive line. Yes, you can. Okay? Listen, I'm not an all-22 guy. I'm not an X's and O's guy. I think Mookie Alexander at Field Goals wrote something this week about, like how their screen plays are so predictable. And they tried to set up a screen with Ken Walker. There was like nobody in a blue shirt anywhere near Ken Walker, and 3 Vikings players just there to slam him down for like a massive loss on first down. So I'm watching that and I'm thinking, yeah, do you know what? I don't know the X's and O's enough to know whether that was one of those really predictable screens that the writer's been writing about this week. But then I see that and I think it probably is, because that's what they've noticed in the build up to this week. So they come up with the excuses. Oh, the O-line's not good. Yeah, you've had How many games have they had now? 15 games to come up with some solutions here? You haven't got it. You haven't got it. It's the same way that people make excuses for Geno Smith. Like, Geno, he would be amazing and he'd never make any mistakes if he just had a perfect team around him. Like, great, good for him. Like, guess what? That's never going to happen. Okay? Don't throw interceptions. Don't throw interceptions that are dropped stupidly by the defense. We had another one of those today. Like, I get the last one, miscommunication. Probably not his fault, probably DK Metcalf's fault. Do you know what? It still looks bad. It's still like 15 interceptions for the season. It's still, if you take that one off the board and say, okay, that wasn't his fault. Well, the one would have been his fault that the Vikings dropped over the middle of the field. People make bloody excuses for him. Oh, the O-line's not perfect. Ryan Grubb, like, come on, let's stop making excuses. The offense is not good enough. Adam, the team is gonna need to win at least one of the last 2 games to match their record from the last 2 years. If they do that, it's just another 9-8 season. That's not exciting. It's poor. It's right bang in the middle of nowhere land. You're not getting any closer. Like if you go 9-8 and then you go 10-7 and then you're gradually getting better, you can go, okay, that's fine. But they're not. It's just 9-8, 9-8, 9-8 every single year. If they even get to 9 wins, they've got to beat the Bears next week or the Rams to get to 9 wins. Hey, even if they get to 10-7, Adam, and let's say they don't make the playoffs, is that amazing? And like, I don't know. It doesn't feel that amazing to me, given what we've seen. Like, I think in some instances, a 10-7 season would have been good. First-time head coach, new staff. Watching the offense play this way, watching the home record, watching the fact that most of their wins have come against bad teams. They've only beaten one team with a winning record this year, and that's Denver in week 1. They play the Broncos next week. They wouldn't beat the Broncos. They beat them because they played them in week 1. And the other thing is that people will go, and I read this on the internet, that people will go, look, it's a new staff, 9-8, that's okay, seen enough. The reason the Seahawks fired Pete Carroll was not to have a rebuild. It was because John Schneider thought this roster was ready to be better than it had shown. And they're going to have the same kind of season. It's just a little bit different. The defense is better, but my word, is not flawless. And you better believe we're going to get onto that. But the offense is just bad. It's bad. And it gives you, it throws you a bone every now and again, Adam. Well, wow, there were 2 great drives in there. 2 really good drives. The one at the end of the half, the one to take the lead, amazing drives. So they just show you a bit of leg, don't they? Make you believe in them, and then they just snatch it away. And that's so frustrating. And they're a frustrating team and a frustrating franchise to follow right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's 9-8, it's doubly frustrating because at one point you were 3-0. So that makes it sort of 6-8 in the last 14 games. Then you're 8-5 as well, which would be 1-3 to finish the season, which, having wrestled the momentum back from that disappointing losing run, it felt like we really had something at 8-5. And the things, we may not have played some of the best teams, but it felt like there was something really quite strong to cling on to there. And you're right about the McDonald thing. I naturally thought, well, you've got rid of the man in Pete Carroll. So as a result, you're allowing yourself a rebuild. But having heard a number of people sort of that they're fairly close to the organization and writing about it, I think you're right that they changed coach because they thought they could make a step immediately from 9-8 up to being a playoff team and win playoff games. And, I think the Rams need to beat the Cardinals next week, and that's the end of the playoffs for us. And it's week 15. So it's basically out of the playoffs in week 15. That's the kind of thing that people should be pissed off about. But it's difficult to know, where are you going to point the blame at this? You fired the head coach already. It would appear that the general manager is on a fairly steady footing. And I don't know. I mean, what's going to happen in the offseason? We're just going to, we're going to run it back. We're going to be better. It is frustrating because I think the thing that annoyed me today is that, you've got a drive, and this probably goes back to Ryan Grubb and the lack of just general focus on the offense. You've got a drive to save the season. You've got a minute. Geno's done it before. You've got a minute. No timeout's fine, but there's enough time to do it. First play, full start, back you up 5 yards. Second play, miscommunication. on. Now, look, I know nothing about nothing when it comes to the NFL, and I love being on this stream, and I'm here for the vibes, to be honest. But even I know that if you've got a minute left and you're backed up to your own 5-yard line, you're trying to go to the sidelines. What is DK Metcalf doing? What are you doing running there? And it may not have been a completion anyway. I'm not sure it was the greatest ball from Geno, but what are you doing coming inside when it's obviously going to be an out route of some sort to the sideline to save clock? Like, it's just the little details that they just don't appear to have any interest in on offense, have just hamstrung this team time and time again this season. And it's boring to watch. Like, it's not even annoying. It's boring. That same old rubbish when push comes to shove. And like, if you're bad, you're bad. You can understand it. But when there is the potential to be good and you let yourself down, that's when I find it. And yeah, I've seen it with 2 teams that I support today, let me tell you. And I'm really not enjoying these double loss Sundays that I've become an absolute expert in recently. Watching a team just like piss it away is so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is you know, when you were talking there about like run it back and stuff like this. The thing is that the thing that I struggle with the most, Adam, is knowing how you actually take the next step. Like, I think there are legitimately some people there that just think, hey, do you know what? If you go and bring in a couple of guards, then like suddenly you're going to be an amazing team. Or that, hey, a couple of guards and a new offensive coordinator, and wow, we'll be 12-win team, and Geno will be holding the Lombardi trophy. Like, no, the Seahawks are a long way away. They're a long way away, guys. Like, look how far away they were from the Packers. Like, I know it was a closer game today, but you're at home against the Vikings. You've lost again. You're 3-6 at home. Sam Darnold's thrown twice as many touchdowns as Geno Smith this year. And yet, if you say to somebody, would you want Sam Darnold instead of Geno Smith, they get personally offended, some of these people. Like, I don't understand any of this. And then you sort of look at the team, like, people are going to, just to talk a bit about the defense. Then I want to come back to the offense, right? Because my head's all over the place at the minute, Adam, and I kind of just want to have a shout at everybody. So, defensive backs, like Tariq Woolen is rubbish. He is a liability. He is somebody with the physical talent to be the best cornerback in the league, but he has not got the wants or the desire to actually make it happen. He is a donkey because he is just making too many mistakes. He's switching off. He can't concentrate. He's all over the place. No. You can't trust that guy, Adam. You can trust him to have a couple of good games a year, 2, 3, 4 good games a year, and then in other games he's a liability. So you say, right, so now cornerbacks are need. Great. Cornerbacks are need again. 18 months after you spent a top 5 pick on a cornerback and have drafted other players. One of them's now playing at safety. One of them was responsible for an offside which negated a sack and then gave up a touchdown pass against Justin Jefferson in Trey Brown. So cornerbacks are need. Are we still looking for some special qualities on the defensive line? I think that the run game on the interior was pretty good today. But, people are saying here, like Byron Murphy finally got to the quarterback today and got a face mask. When are we going to see people like that? You draft him, you want to have some impact, and he's not really doing anything. And then you're looking at like Jared Verse playing well for the Rams and Braden Fisk doing well for the Rams. And you're thinking, well, why can't the Seahawks top 20 pick on the defensive line have a go? And he finally has a good play, and it's a face mask. Like, it's just frustrating. It feels to me like there's still work to be done on the defense, Adam. It's far from the biggest problem. But instead of like fine-tuning the defense, you've got to rebuild the offense because the offensive line needs a complete rebuild. And then you get back to the quarterback situation. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, Geno Smith is not, he's far from the worst, but like people are saying Geno's the problem in the comments. That's not correct. He is not the problem. He's just not the solution to the problem. He's not the future. He is somebody that the Seahawks are going to have to replace sooner rather than later. There may well be some people out there who think that he warrants a massive contract to commit him to the Seahawks for the next 4 or 5 years. But you can't. You can't commit to players who take the sacks that he takes, who throw the level of interceptions that he throws, without compensating with like the brilliance that you see with his physical talent is there. It's clear. But he doesn't do it enough. He doesn't elevate, Adam. He will show the talent. in a touchdown drive, and you go, wow, physically impressive, great touchdown drive, great composure, well done. Then the next one will be a crap interception. And you think, okay, because that's who he always has been. He's always been somebody with amazing physical talent, but as capable of the other side of the game as well, the mistakes, the errors, and just everything comes crashing down. But that's the point. How on earth do you put everything together so that when we're sat here in 12 months, Adam, you were talking about a team that has taken a step forward? If the defense needs fine-tuning, if the offensive line needs rebuilding, and if you need to find either someone who can be the heir apparent to Geno Smith, or you need to find someone who can do that job better, how on earth are you doing all these things in a 2-month period next spring so that this time next year we ain't just sat here with the Seahawks at 8-7 again, saying we're all a year older and no, it's changed?
Yeah, I think the really tricky thing that we've got, and Mike McDonald strikes me as a guy this would really frustrate him, where he's come from in Baltimore, the type of way they want to play, and listen to his press conferences, like just thinking about how you're talking about Woolen and Smith, is that if you take away the good stuff they do, because you kind of take that as read, and you take that you're trying to win a championship, you need them to do the good stuff. The unreliability and just the inherent randomness always of when they do something atrocious is very hard to build a team around. Like when you don't know when one of your star players is going to do something horrendous, it becomes very difficult to structure a team around that. Like Ernest Jones, for example, Jordan Love, Devon Witherspoon, they might have a bad play a month that you think, oh my God, what's he doing? Why has he done that? That's just bizarre. And that's going to happen at sport. But players like Woolen and Noah Fant and Geno Smith and Charles Cross, there's just too many moments in every game where you say, what are you doing? Like, you just killed us in that moment. And I can imagine that would frustrate Mike McDonald unbelievably. And I'm pretty clear that he benched Woolen for the first drive of the game. I don't know if that ever was given as the actual reason. Someone's put JSN just randomly, like JSN's base level is so good, like he's a player that you want to build your team around. But then DK is another guy, like, what are you doing, DK? And it's just really hard to build a team around it. So he's dropped Woolen, he brings in Trey Brown for the one-on-one against Justin Jefferson, having given offside. How has that happened? And I don't know, it just feels like there's too many players at the minute that are coughing up dreadful moments at inopportune times. And for me, that feels like a real impediment to progress, because you just don't know who's going to do what round the corner. And any progress, it's just one step forward and 2 steps back with so many of these moments now.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, we have to talk a bit about Geno Smith. And look, my position on Geno Smith has been pretty consistent for a while. And sadly, it always gets portrayed as being that of a Geno hater, and it's not. I don't think rushing him out the door for the sake of it to say sign Gardner Minshew next year is a good idea. Like, you have to have a plan to move on and actually upgrade that position. And listen, I do not think that Sam Darnold is a franchise amazing. Like, you watch Joe Burrow today, he's doing some weird stuff to make things happen. He's an unbelievable player. The Bengals are probably going to waste Joe Burrow's career, but he's an absolutely sensational quarterback. When you watch Sam Darnold, I don't think I'm watching an absolutely sensational quarterback. But I'm just watching him today and I'm thinking, maybe, like, he's younger, he's functioning, he's running this. Is there somebody who has worked with Kevin O'Connell or Sean McVay who can put together a competent offense that can enable Sam Darnold to have 80% of the success he's had this year because of all the touchdowns he's had and the plays that he's making? Is that hope? And then do you go and draft for offensive line and get a new offensive coordinator as part of that package? Does that help elevate the team? Because that's what I want to. That's what I kind of feel like I want to talk about, Adam, is how does this team break away from what it is? Because with the greatest respect, it's not just Geno Smith. What you've been doing on the offensive line hasn't worked for years. You have to do something different, whether that means changing scouts, whether it means changing the people you're listening to as advisors, whether it's the GM just completely revamping everything that he thinks about offensive. I don't know what it is. John Schneider will have a better answer as to what they've been doing over the last few years and what they need to change to try and make that work. But then also, you can't, if you'd have said to me in 2022, if you roll out Geno Smith for the next 3 seasons, what do you think Seattle's record would be, Adam? My answer would be probably about 9-8. And guess what? That's where they have been for 3 years. His touchdown to interception ratio is now 17-15. It's not all his fault. Some of it is, though. And if you were to say like 17-15 touchdown interception rate, who does that sound like? It sounds like Jameis Winston. It sounds like Kirk Cousins in 2024. It doesn't sound like quarterback who is going to take you to the promised land. So I'm like, what are the answers to this team breaking out of where it is? I think the answer to that, Adam, is something a bit more disruptive than we've seen in the last few off seasons. I think we need to see things mixed up a little bit here. Let's get let's do something a bit different. Whether that's the approach, whether it's the personnel, because ultimately, what have we got to lose, Adam? Do you think this team is on a trajectory now? If they just keep going on, adding a player here, adding a player there, re-signing a player here that they quite like, re-signing one here, does this team get to where the Vikings are now, or where the Lions are, or where the Bills are? My answer to that would be a big, fat no.
I think the franchise have prided themselves on having a higher floor, which always keeps them competitive, which always keeps them semi-relevant. But I think we've said for years that, to be honest, that's kind of, it's a bit slapping yourself on the back for a job well done because you weren't terrible. And I think that's an attitude that's permeated through the franchise far, far too much. And in sacking Pete Carroll, I think we all thought, fair play. They've had a look at something that thought this is an issue that's stopping them being a championship team, and they're going to risk being bad to maybe be better. And I reading through the comments before you came on, and when you're talking, so many people saying Geno's not the problem. He is not the problem. He's not the problem. I'm not really fussed about who's not a problem anymore. What I'd like is some players that are the solution to the malaise, because it is really a bit of a malaise. Like, we're going to miss the playoffs back-to-back years. That's not good. It's going to be 9 wins, maybe a 10, but you should really get 10 wins when you get 9 home games for a 3rd year in a row. I'm just not fussed about players that aren't a problem anymore, because that's just not going to get you anywhere other than where we are. And I've said for a while, I don't mind losing winning 4 or 5 games a season if they've tried something to maybe make them win 12, 13. I appreciate that from a franchise that's trying to make money and sell tickets and be relevant. That's not that easy. But I think from a fan perspective, it's been dull. And we've found a number of ways to make it dull over the last 4 or 5 years. They've changed a lot. They made the biggest trade maybe the city will ever see in 2022, and nothing actually came from it. Like, the Broncos definitely lost the trade, but I don't really think that the Seahawks won the trade to a point that it made the team so much better over the period that it was well, great, but you did that and nothing really changed. So for me, I just want to see something different. And I feel like a broken record, because I feel like we say this the last week of December every year for the last 3 or 4 years on this stream, but I don't really know how to jolt a team into action with that. But I'm really fed up of saying he's not the problem, because I just don't think that diagnosing that is going to get us anywhere closer to where we want to be.
Yeah, and definitely the answer is not, hey, let's give him a massive contract extension. I mean, like, the people who've been saying that need to just park that and give it a rest. Like, there's no reason for that. There's no explanation to why that would be justified. It just wouldn't. Like, the only way that there's a kind of like a new contract involved here is if both parties come together and go, look, Seahawks kind of think there's nothing better out there. We need to lower your cap here, and they come to some kind of mutual agreement which suits both parties. That's it. The idea of big whopping contract extension is for the birds. It's a nonsense, and you just want them to be better than this. Like, how many years of just mediocrity before you have to shake things up a little bit? Like, you can't just keep going on and on. There are franchises out there, Adam, who get kind of stuck in this place and you never get out of it. And like, the Seahawks are kind of there right now. They need to have a disruptive off season. That doesn't mean blow it up. That's a term that would mean getting rid of like huge chunks of the roster, starting from scratch, running the risk of being like a 2-win team. And no one's suggesting that. But you do have to make some difficult decisions. You do have to make some changes to key players. Like I was asked on the broadcast today, we got talking about the tickets and why there were so many Packers fans last week and stuff like that. And it was sort of couched like, why is that happening when the Seahawks are in a playoff battle? And I said, one of the reasons is the Seahawks don't have any star players. There is nobody that you feel like I have to be there on Sunday because I'm going to see him. Now, you look at the Vikings, they've got Justin Jefferson. I would not suggest that right now, despite the slightly ludicrous suggestions of one person in the Seattle media that Jackson Smith-Njigba is now the best receiver in the NFL. I mean, but there is a man who talks out of his backside regularly. Clearly, Justin Jefferson is a star. Okay? You would pay to watch Justin Jefferson play because he's one of the top 10 players in the NFL. The Seahawks don't have it. They've got good players. I'm not suggesting they're completely devoid of talent or anything, but they don't have any stars that you've got to go and see. So you have to sort of manipulate stuff. One, you have to find those stars in unconventional ways through the draft. It's been such a long time since Seattle found a real, true gem to be a star. And you've also got to just see if you can find those players who can get you to a better level. And that's why I think you've got to be prepared to do some big things this year. But you've also got to be prepared to move on from the defensive coordinator. And I think that's a matter of time. And to go sort of full circle on that, I think right now, I'd be happy to give Jake Peets a 2-game audition, see if he can come up with something better. Because this is just not working. And I think we can all see the writings on the wall. Someone's going to fall on the sword for the way that this has ended. And it's going to be Ryan Grubb and maybe other coaches as well. The only one who is safe is Mike McDonald. Let's get through some super chats. Kay Sizzle says the unwillingness to run the ball by Grubb is astounding. Fake punt, then 1st and 5. Light box, run the ball? Nope. Call a pass play, get sacked. It's frustrating reliving this through the comments, Adam, because it was so utterly mind-blowingly frustrating. And yeah, I mean, I've seen Brock Hewitt saying, well, you know, this is why they lost, because the numbers don't lie, because they didn't run the ball very well and they haven't got a running game. Well, it's no surprise they don't have a bloody running game when you choose to ignore it for 3 quarters.
Yeah, I don't think the Vikings ran the ball brilliantly today, but they just kept doing it, you know, and they just kept knocking away and chipping away, and it just keeps everyone honest. I mean, you mentioned Mookie Alexander a while ago. I think he's had quite a big thing about how, you know, Grubb, he appears to be struggling with like the hash mark differences in some of his schemes and concepts. I don't know if that is affecting the run game as well, but it's just, it's almost like Seahawk Twitter from 2018 has been put in charge of the team. And like we're seeing that like the real life manifestation of some online chat that like a joke's been taken way too far and they're actually in charge of the team, because it's really just bizarre. Like not even like annoyed by it. I would love to just sit down over a beer with Grubb and say, like, why are you doing this? Because it doesn't, to me, that like the ultimate layman, it doesn't make any sense of what's the reasoning behind it, because there must be something. And Mike McDonald's in the headset every play. He's hearing what play is coming down the pipe. So he knows what's coming and doesn't appear to be kicking off about it overly. I mean,
well, how much responsibility does he bear then? I mean, he's not doing anything about it either, is he?
I mean, look, in sort of the Let Ross Cook era, that when, you know, after the Buffalo game, when that changed, you know, I think Pete Carroll went into an office and said, we are now going to run the ball. And I think reports would say that, you know, the practice reps shifted from 80-20 pass to about 60-40 run plays in practice. And that was an indication to the team that we are now going to run the ball. Now, I don't know if McDonald doesn't feel that he's, you know, got enough cachet to make a decision like that. I don't know if, you know, was he hired by John Schneider? Was he hired by Mike McDonald? And therefore he's Schneider's guy and he, you know, has more dominance than McDonald would do. I don't know, but it's just strange because everyone is saying it, everyone's seeing it, and I don't understand why it's not happening. I don't know if If you had to answer a question, why are they not running the ball more? What would you answer?
Look, if I were to guess, I would imagine that their answer would be because the offensive line stinks and they don't feel comfortable doing it. And they may throw in that, well, Ken Walker's not 100% and Zach Charbonnet is not 100%. And therefore, that's why we did it. We thought our best chance to win was Geno Smith. So I guess that's how they would answer it. And look, there's probably like a nugget of truth in that. But I can't believe it. Like you were running the ball. Like if Ken Walker's not healthy, then don't play him. Like if Zach Charbonnet's not healthy, then don't play him. Play the Boise State running back instead with Kenny McIntosh. Like how often do other teams just trot out running backs and have a running game? You have to have a running game. Like it's not acceptable. It's really, really bloody frustrating that they just refuse to do this. And it's not good enough. And they should have worked something out by now. But do you know what? Those questions, Adam, I suspect will not be answered or even asked when Mike Macdonald next speaks on the radio tomorrow morning. Instead, we'll probably find out what a great leader Ernest Jones is again. Or what Mike Macdonald is going to have for Christmas dinner. We will not find out the answers to that. I mean, I would love somebody, please, if you are listening to this, to just explain. You are a Harbaugh disciple. You say every week that you want to run the ball. Why don't you? Why can't you? I think he'd answer that question, Adam. I think he likes talking about football. I think he actually would like people to just ask him a straight question and not be looking for flowery stuff. I think they want to just ask him some football questions. Ask that question tomorrow. In fact, you know what? Someone should ask. And this is what I would ask Adam if I was at a press conference, whether they are considering making a change at coordinator or whether he's dissatisfied with the work of the offense and the offensive coordinator. It's a very difficult question to ask somebody, but that's what you're there for. You're not there to be mates. You're not there to come up with convenient questions. You're there to ask the difficult questions. That's what the media have to do, I'm afraid. And listen, no one's going to slap you on the back for it afterwards. You'll probably get absolutely hammered on social media. That's the world you live in, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I don't think Macdonald is sort of experienced enough to swerve it without giving something away. I feel like he would almost be forced to answer the question because he just feels like a good, nice, honest bloke. Like I don't think, the way in which Pete was able to evade the media, he picked up that savvy. Macdonald doesn't strike me as that kind of guy that could do that. I feel like if you did answer him the question straight up, you'd get 70% of a straight answer back, which would be fascinating.
We have got an unreal amount of super chats. So I want to try and get through them. Daniel says, is Grubb calling plays for flag football? I really wanted the Grubb experiment to work, but philosophically, it just does not seem like a fit. Zero run game, procedural penalties at home are a no-no. Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate the super chat. I think it's interesting that the co-offensive coordinator at Alabama is one of the names being linked with Washington State's head coaching job, because I just wonder whether it's already sort of well known behind the scenes that Grubb's going to be going to Alabama in this offseason to join Kalen DeBoer to get them going, because they stunk. And maybe they need to be working together again. And the Seahawks go in a different direction, I imagine.
I think Mark Sanchez pointed out on the broadcast that he's never been to Lumen Field or whatever and seen the Seahawks have more false starts than the road team. And that did feel like quite a damning statement.
I missed that when I was obviously listening to the radio broadcast, but that would have really frustrated me listening to that, Adam, if I'd have sat at home listening to that. Corey says the best drive was the Barner touchdown pass and run. Yeah,
who'd have thought? Yep. Who'd have thought? Yeah. Is that allowed? That'll never catch on.
No, it was a good. The first catch in the run, and then the great catch for the touchdown. Really, really good. Corey says fire Grubb, give the last two to Jake Peets. Yeah, I think a few people will probably feel that way. I mean, if I had to guess, the chances of it happening are probably 95-5 against it happening. But just give it a go. Like if they already know that Grubb's a goner, you might as well just give Peets a chance. Why not maybe Peets will say, I don't want to do it. I don't want, don't put me out there to try and salvage things. You might actually damage my reputation by making me try and deal with this offense and pick up the pieces. I don't want to do that. So maybe it's not the right thing to do. Maybe it would actually come across poorly for the Seahawks. But Wimerek says top 3 offensive coordinator replacements. Wow, that's a difficult question to think of an answer for right off the spot. I mean, I guess the first thing you do is, if it's not someone like Pete, I mean, the first thing I would do, Adam, is are there people on the staff at Minnesota that you would feel could do what Kevin O'Connell's doing, or has been around him and you feel comfortable enough to give it? I mean, they've got like Josh McCown's the quarterback coach. He's been linked with head coaching jobs, but he's never called plays as far as I'm aware. So you appoint somebody like that, and that becomes risky. But then he's clearly part of a great staff in Minnesota. Who's going to get fired? Like, is Mike McDaniel going to get fired? Is Brian Daboll, who's a crap head coach but was a very good offensive coordinator in Buffalo, is he going to get fired? Is Doug Peterson going to get fired? What's going to happen with Kevin Stefanski? I mean, Cleveland would be stupid to get rid of him, but it's Cleveland. Like, these are the things, like, who is going to get fired, Adam, feels like the big question there to answer that. I really don't want an underwhelming offensive coordinator hire.
I don't know what will be whelming or underwhelming, but I always pour a bit of scorn on the idea when people say, well, John Schneider's from the Green Bay, from the Ron Wolf tree, and as a result, he loves quarterbacks. But when you see it in the flesh, it never happens because he never picks a quarterback. Now, McDonald, maybe this is too simplistic, but has obviously cut his teeth under both Harbaughs. If that's the kind of football he wants to play, then he should want an offensive coordinator that one of the Harbaughs would want to hire, would be the natural progression to that. Now, I don't know, is Mike McDaniel the kind of person you could see working for a Harbaugh? I don't think so.
No,
he's not really, is it? I mean, I'm trying to be polite, but he's not in the slightest. And you look at the way that Harbaugh's recreated, has turned around the Chargers, offensively already. Like, is that the kind of bully ball that we want to play? And if so, is there a guy on one of the staffs or the old Michigan staff that can come in and play the way that McDonald wants to play? Because if Grubb is fired, the main suggestion that would show is he is not putting up the type of offense that Mike McDonald, the head coach, wants to play. And that really should be the only consideration as far as I'm concerned. How does McDonald want to play, and who's the best man for that job? I mean, it's not simple, but it should be, at least that should narrow your options down to, here's our short list, pick one of these guys.
I hope they've spent the last 5 weeks thinking about that question. I hope this is not something that they're going to come to at the end of the offseason. I hope they know who the next defensive coordinator is going to be. Because I don't think it's going to be Ryan Grubb, but I've not thought that for a while. PGZ206 says Geno should have had 5 interceptions. The Vikings dropped 3, and Woolen is just pathetic. We've got so many super chats. I don't want to spend too much time on each one, Adam. But I mean, I can't remember Geno having 5 interception-worthy plays. Obviously, he had the 2 that were picked off. There was the 3rd that should have been picked off and was dropped. And
Shaq Griffin could have picked him off on the bottom right of the screen to DK, who again sort of whiffed on the play a little bit. He caught it and sort of fell backwards and dropped it. I can't remember a 5th.
Okay. If you were to give Geno Smith a score out of 10 for this game, what would you give him?
7.5.
Yeah.
I think he's a 7.5 player. I always have done. We always have done. Like, people make out, he's a hater. You're a hater. You love him. We just think he's a fine guy, a fine quarterback doing a fine job. And I think that probably is what he's doing. And he's obviously hamstrung by a lot of things in front of him, but he also does stuff that are annoying and make mistakes and bring some stuff on himself. Maybe 7.5 will prove to be a bit harsh, a bit generous overall. But I think it's about right. I mean, he threw for over 300 yards. It's one of the best defenses in the league. A couple of touchdowns.
I thought 7 because he had, the 2 touchdown drives are fantastic. And as you mentioned, he played a very good defense, and for the most part did a good job. But that's Geno, isn't it? It's like Geno. It's always 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's a great touchdown drive, a great throw, a great piece of physical brilliance, and then a bonehead pick. Like that's I'm afraid a kind of the book on Geno Smith. Hans says frustrating season. Each time we take 1 step forward, we take 2, 3 backwards. I hadn't read that actually before. Same comment with Geno Smith. Unsure if we're any better now than at the start of the season. I think the defense is better, but it's. obviously it's better. You know, the run defense is a lot better, but it's not so much better than that the team feels that much better. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, Adam. Like, you know, I was saying a few weeks ago when they were winning those games, hey, maybe this is a bit like 2011 where, you know, you can see the direction and it's just like putting the finishing touches to it. They're not. It's more like, you know, I think I'm going to stop thinking back to the 2011, 2012 type of season comparisons, because all this reminds me of is a slightly different variant of the last 2 9-8 seasons.
Well, when do you reckon the Seahawks? It's a hard question because the seasons all sort of meld into one. When do you reckon the last time is the Seahawks were definitely better than they are right now?
When was the last time they're definitely better than they are now?
Yeah, or even better or worse to a point where you can say there's been any variance. Like maybe the first 6 weeks of the Let Russ Cook season.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I think that season they were better than they are now.
And that was what 5-6 years ago now.
Yeah. The frustrating thing about that period was that you did feel as if legitimately they could be a decent contender, especially with Russ at his peak. But the defense, they just kept getting wrong every year. And now you don't sort of have that sort of, hey, Russ could have a great season. He's still got that in him. Can we sort the defense out to enable him to sort of have that, or the offensive line? Now you're kind of thinking, O-line stinks, quarterback's a bridge, defense still needs more. Oh, that's a lot of things. And it becomes hard.
Yeah, unless they draft unbelievably well, it's going to be hard for this team to be better next season than they are right now on paper.
Yeah,
which they don't have enough. Alarming.
They don't have enough money or enough picks to get noticeably better next year. Mike says, stop blaming Grubb. Geno is the problem. I've been saying this since March 8th, 2022, and I'm not wrong. You are wrong, Mike. You're talking bollocks. I mean, you talk bollocks of quite a fair bit about this. I mean, like, look, if you don't think Grubb is in any way to blame for that, then I'm sorry, you're just wrong. Like, you know, the play calling is a nonsense. We can all see it. We're all seeing it. No, that does not mean that Geno is brilliant, amazing, the answer, the solution. But to say that it's all Geno Smith and not Ryan Grubb, you are just the opposite of the people who think that Geno's to blame for nothing and should be paid $50 million a year, Nick. You are the Spider-Man meme of pointing at each other. For every Jackson Bevans, there's a Mike Barrett, I'm afraid. That's where we are, you know, and you both just, there is a somewhere in the middle where reality sits, which is that he is a good bridge quarterback. And the problem is the Seahawks have not been able to bring in someone to bridge to in the last 3 years. So now that you're left in this situation, looking at another draft in 2025, where you say it's really hard to find somebody in this draft that can be the bridge. And likewise, how do you get better than Geno Smith right now? It's really hard. Probably the only answer to that, Adam, is to go and pay Sam Darnold an absolute fortune. And will that make the Seahawks any better? Maybe, maybe not. But that's a really difficult place to be as a franchise when that's what you're faced with.
I can't top that. Just let that hang in the air for a bit because it's perfect. Baker Mayfield. So it's going to be someone like that, right? Who you're going to pay a fortune to. Do you want to do that? Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Like, listen, I'm not against it. Like, if they want to give Sam Darnold a Baker Mayfield contract, probably be a little bit more than Baker Mayfield, I would imagine, because the Baker Mayfield didn't lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to 12-2. If they win their last 2 games and the Lions are beat up right now, they finish 15-2, and win the NFC, he's going to get more money than Baker Mayfield. Plus, because the quarterback draft is crap, not everybody's going to get a quarterback in the draft. Like, you may only have one first-round quarterback. I know people say, Cam Ward. Oh, no, it might just be Shedeur Sanders. So someone is going to be willing to pay, through desperation, Sam Darnold a lot of money. So you're going to have to get in that if you want to do that. I could get very expensive. Now, I'm not totally against that. I don't know if that makes the Seahawks a better team, significantly better team. But I also appreciate that they have to get better at quarterback in the next few years, because I don't think Geno Smith's going to get them to the promised land. I just don't. Anyway, Odium says DK can't be re-signed. Attitude/cost. Nor Walker, injuries. Nor Woolen, effort and attitude. And that's an interesting one. Adam, what do you make of that? So that Walker unbelievably talented. it's starting to look like he's made of, I don't know, I was going to say glass, but I wanted to think of something funnier like sausage, like, because he just keeps getting, like, he gets nicked up all the time. Woolen, I agree, like, that the thought of paying him a fortune is just, I mean, like, imagine that guy with a lot of money. I mean, no. And DK is the tough one, because I tell you now, if you trade DK Metcalf to one of these teams with a quarterback, Adam, I think he could be unbelievable, or maybe he won't be. But I could well imagine you trading him for a late first and a third, and getting absolutely knob all out of that, and thinking, what did you do? So I think that's the hard one.
I mean, if you try and assess that every move you make is with intention to get better as an overall team, I think you could, create a scenario where you get rid of Kenneth Walker after, maybe give him a 1 year deal after his fourth year. Maybe you let Tariq Woolen walk after his fourth year. And you can see a way that you can draft someone that, can do the job to a similar, if not higher level. You drafted Woolen at a time where no one would have expected to get a cornerback of that level. I think, particularly the way in which you talk about the draft, it strikes me as it would be very difficult to get rid of DK Metcalf at this stage and get better as a team in that position. Now, maybe you use that money, everyone's really utopian about this, say, well, we'll get rid of him and we'll sign 2 great offensive guards. I would suggest that seldom, if ever, happens. And of course, that would make you a better team, perhaps. But again, I don't think that's particularly realistic. DK is the kind of player that the more I watch in this season, even in a season where he's not been elite, but has done a lot of good things and been quite helped his quarterback, today notwithstanding at the end. Yeah, I'd be very wary about getting rid of DK Metcalf, considering we've already said that it's going to be harder to be better next season than it is now already. I don't know what you think about that.
I'm really torn on it, because on the one hand, it's $30 million a year. You'd imagine that you're going to end up paying the guy, and that's a lot of money. But I suppose you have to break it down. Like, if you suddenly plonk $30 million in front of John Schneider, who are they spending that on? Like,
About 26 players for 1.2 million. That'd be the problem.
BJ Finney. Like, who are you going to spend that money on? Like, if you could say, hey, do you know what? You could go and get Buda Baker, for example. I'd be like, yeah, maybe you could tempt me with that. But he's just re-signed with the Cardinals, so you can't go and do that. Anybody who is worth having, who's going to hit the free agency market, with the exception of Sam Darnold, is, and who knows what the Vikings may do with him, is going to get overpaid. So you are going to then say, okay, we're not going to pay DK Metcalf. Let's go and pay this offensive lineman who is of a Damian Lewis level standard $20 million a year. Are you better for that? Like, than having DK for 30? Like, that's the hard thing. And then you say, okay, well, you get a first round pick as well. Let's say that you trade him to the Bills, for example, and it's like the 30th pick in the draft. Who are you taking at pick 30? LJ Collier? I mean, it could be TJ Watt, but it could be LJ Collier. Like, it's really hard. Like, who are you taking there? So it becomes such a difficult discussion, because I don't think ideally you do pay DK Metcalf $30 million a year, because Jackson Smith-Njigba's Seattle's best receiver now. But if you trade DK away, I don't know if you're going to come out of that with a win. So you almost say, well, make it work with DK rather than trade him away. But I understand the other side of the argument. That's why it's such a difficult one to work out. I think with Walker, you let the contract play out. It's such a shame. It was an unbelievable player. Was an Iron Man for Michigan State and a Wake Forest, where he was before that. In Seattle, it's nicked up all the time. And it's such a good running back draft. I'd be tempted to just take one on day 3 with the idea that maybe they could just replace Walker down the line as opposed to paying him. Hawks fan Matt Man says, Odd Schneider brings Drew Lock back next year. I think it's a long shot. But what it does do, Adam, is when you're watching Drew, thank you, Matt, for that. When you're watching Drew Lock, you're thinking, this guy really rated this quarterback. And it reminds you that he also really rated Charlie Whitehurst enough to trade a 3rd round pick and like give up a whole round nearly in round 2 in 2010. So that for every Mahomes and Allen there's a I liked Whitehurst and Locke.
And Hal. Oh, have we lost Rob? Not sure if we lost Rob or me there. You can let me know in the comments if that's Rob that's frozen or me.
It was me, Adam. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
My internet just decided to have a playoff. I think Ryan Grubb was calling the play on it.
I think I mentioned Sam Howell and it crashed all the internet in the Rotherham area, because he also gave a 3rd round pick for Sam Howell, for goodness sake.
Yeah, you said Sam Howell and my internet broke. So there we go.
Make of that what you will.
I mean, that's a good point, though, isn't it? Like we I know as a Seahawks fan, I cling to John Schneider like Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen. That's comforting. As a Seahawks fan, I'm then having this conversation with you and reminding myself, Whitehurst, Howell, Locke. He wanted to draft Andy Dalton and Pete Carroll stopped him, apparently. So I don't know what to think. I really don't know what to think. So that's helpful analysis. This from Thomas. It says, isn't it Schneider's fault for building this crap team? It is, Thomas, you are right. It's not just Schneider's fault, though. You can put a collection of players together who can underperform still, Adam. And the other thing is that with John Schneider, I do think you can make sort of cases for, okay, they took Devon Witherspoon. Who would you take instead? Okay, they took Jackson Smith and Jeeper. Who would you take instead? Who would you have taken instead of Boy MFA? Who would you have taken instead of Derek Hall? Who would you have taken instead of Ken Walker? So although they haven't built the team off the back of the Wilson trade that you would want necessarily to be a lot better, I also think there's that weird sort of horrible nobody wins in this argument situation whereby you go, yeah, but okay, but how are you building it? If you could come up with 6 names, you go, if they'd have drafted him, and him instead, they'd be a freaking good team. Those names don't exist, Adam. And that's what makes it a really tough conversation to have.
I suppose it depends how far back you want to go. I mean, do you want to go down the Creed Humphrey versus D. Eskridge, Kristen Michael, Travis Kelce were picked, taking the pick aside, weren't they? And that's probably way too far back to go to. I think Schneider's probably the one guy that we maybe view slightly differently. I think I'm generally a bit harsher on Schneider than you've been. And I wonder, I mean, let's say if you don't think he's at fault, the problem, has your view this season on how much of the blame pie he should be apportioned, has that shifted at all? Maybe that's a more interesting conversation than who's to blame. If you were looking at your view in May versus your view now, what is your overall percentage in confidence or blame that you would give Schneider?
Well, let me answer it like this. So if I think at the end of the Carroll era, I was very happy for John Schneider to get the crack at the next sort of leading the team. And my faith has dropped in the subsequent sort of 9 or 10 months. So that is because of the offensive line situation. It's the staff appointments, not Mike McDonald, but the way that they've constructed the offensive staff, I think, is a disappointment. Having made such a big play about him getting the chance now to hire the staff, to whiff so badly on the offensive side of the ball is a problem. The fact that we are 3 years in now, and we're now sort of thinking maybe we need to run Geno Smith back for a 4th season as the starter without any sort of solution for the future is a problem. This is the GM who was tasked with replacing Russell Wilson, and he's not done it at all. And we're kind of just sort of kicking the can down the road every year. Like if it had gone and made a big play for somebody and we were waiting for that player to develop and be ready and to take over, that's one thing, but we don't have that. And again, that's not necessarily his fault, but he can't keep kicking the can down the road with an average team. Like eventually there has to be more to that, Adam. I don't want to fire John Schneider. I know a lot of people are going to hate that and they're going to really disagree with me. I don't think there's any real benefit to that. I think you've kind of gone down this road now and he needs to sort of sort this out, but he's got a lot of work to do. He's got a lot of work to do, and the pressure should be on starting next year.
Yeah, I'm just not sure I can stomach, and someone's mannerisms are not their fault, but he's going to go rock up to the podium and just sort of have the jovial mumbling and stumbling and trying to crack a few wise jokes with some of the guys that he knows in the media room, just because he's obviously very comfortable in his position. And there's a level of seriousness to McDonald that I really appreciate and respect at a time where, things don't look great. And you just know Schneider just doesn't have that. And that's a me problem much more than it's a Schneider problem. It's how I view him. But that's going to be annoying, like hearing his press conference after missing the playoffs again. And he's sort of, cracking wise a little bit about how great things have gone. And we just missed a couple of things there. And that could have changed it all.
And it's a good point. And I think if John Schneider was here, he'd tell us to shut the F up and, he can do what he wants, with his body language. But I do think like a level of seriousness is required this offseason. I want to see a different approach, a different body language, a different tone, and a sort of giving off the impression that, there needs to be some urgency here. And you know what? I've said this, Adam, a couple of times now. I think he should do some more interviews. And I don't think it should be with just Rabel before a game. I don't think it should just be during the off season with his mates, on at 7-10. I think he should come out and do an interview where he's asked some probing questions and be seen to answer them. And listen, everybody would know what, in his position, what kind of questions he's going to ask. So prepare your answers. Get your game plan in order so that when you come out there and you answer the questions, and I've said this so many times, I don't understand why coaches and GMs, and I think the same over here in English sport, why they think hiding is the best solution. The best thing you can do when you're under pressure is be seen to face the music, to go out there and answer some difficult questions, but have convincing answers to give back. I've done those interviews where you go in and you're thinking, here we go. This is it. I can ask anything because this chief executive or this manager or this owner is under pressure, and the fans will accept you asking anything. And you come out afterwards and you go, do you know what? They dealt with that so well. They fronted up. They didn't get arsey about the questions. They answered everything. They gave some convincing answers. Even if you didn't agree with some of them, they fronted up and faced the music. And then the fans come out afterwards and they go, fair play. Like they took everything on there and they took it and they answered it and they faced the music. Those people gain respect and time. The people who hide and never talk get nothing. And it's not that John hides, because he does do the interviews, but the interviews are always with his buddies. They're all, and it's at a podium where he's going to get asked, what are you going to do with this player's contract? What are you going to do with it? The same with it. What's the injury situation with Ken Walker? What's the injury situation? Like, go and be interviewed by somebody, whoever it is. Find someone who will give you a grilling. Find someone who will give you a grilling, John. I think it would do you the power good, and I think the fans would appreciate that, and it would just be a breath of fresh air. Darth Soldier says, one face mask killed the game. Darth, I really appreciate that super chat. I don't agree with that whatsoever. One play is not going to, there were interceptions, there was bad coverage, there were mistakes, there was play calling issues. The Vikings also had a hand in that. That one face mask did not kill the game. It was a huge play, but those things happen. Like, I imagine if I was trying to push a 300 man out of the way to get to a quarterback, I might accidentally put my hand in a face mask. So I'm not going to just pin this on Byron Murphy. Adam, are you okay for time? Because I'm wary that I don't even.
No, keep going.
I haven't got halfway through these super chats.
You're fine.
There's loads. Dar's got another one. Also, give Geno a good O-line and commit to the run. He will destroy defenses. Well, he might, but he also might throw interceptions, which is what he's done in his career.
But also, who wouldn't thrive in that situation? Do you need to pay $45 million for a player to do that in that scenario? It would be my question.
Thank you. That's the perfect answer in the form of a question there, Adam. Which quarterback? This is always the thing with Geno. If you just give Geno an amazing offensive line and great weapons and a great play caller, well, yeah. So would Aidan O'Connell. It's. I get that there's levels, but like people are going, well, he needs the perfect environment and then he will thrive. Well, that's why you pay a quarterback so much money, because they make up for the fact that you're not likely to have that. Wilson 502 says there needs to be more serious discussion about John Schneider. He's absolutely failed to have a long-term plan at quarterback post the Russell Wilson trade, and the offensive line is a constant issue. I actually wonder sometimes, Wilson, thank you for that, Adam, whether having Geno Smith is actually, people are going to take this so the wrong way. Oh, I can bear, I'm standing on the landmine right now. I know it's going to go off. Having Geno Smith play at this level is a problem. Because if you have a really, really, really bad quarterback, Adam, you feel the pressure to go and get a better one. And if you have an amazing quarterback, there's never any debate. Like, none of the Bengals fans going, oh, should we pay Joe Burrow? I don't know if we should. Like, everyone was like, just pay him, please. We need to keep this guy. When you have the quarterback who is good some of the time, not good some of the time, it prevents you from having the urgency to go and try and get better. It keeps you sort of just ticking along, but it also prevents you from getting the player who could perhaps get you over the top. And that's why they call it purgatory.
Yeah, I mean, I think if, who knows the ins and outs of what's going on, but if you were to assume that Pete Carroll had had enough of Russell Wilson and it was his call to get rid of him, you would suggest that the boss would say, look, we'll sign off on this, we'll do this, but you've now got 2 years, Pete, where you have to show to us that we're going to be better and it's worth it. And I felt for a long time with Schneider that the longer he can put off making the big investment on the quarterback, he never actually starts the sand timer on his sort of period where he has to prove himself. So Geno is actually quite a fortunate player for Schneider to have, because you can fall back on it's a bridge, but he's playing well. And, with 9 wins and we're near the playoffs, he's quite a good delaying tactic for Schneider, because if he was dreadful, Schneider would have to go and do something about the quarterback. And at that point, we as a fan base could say, this is John Schneider's quarterback. We're going to judge him from now. But I don't feel we're ever going to be in that position until Geno's not there. That's not Geno's fault, but it does strike me that situationally for Schneider, Geno has been an incredibly fortunate person to have stumbled upon.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if Drew Lock had started 2022 and just been as bad as Drew Lock has shown to be, maybe they end up in a different situation in the draft. Maybe they feel a bit more urgency to go and do something about this. Maybe they end up in a better situation as a consequence. I think that's part of the problem. Is you were almost better off being especially bad at quarterback and then feeling the pinch to do something about it, or being amazing at quarterback and not having to do that. When you're kind of in this middle ground, it can be an issue. And for all of the laughing and look, I can't remember what my opinion was at the time when the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr., but at least they had and everyone will laugh, it's $90 million for 14 games. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Paying Kirk Cousins that money when you could have just drafted Michael Penix in the first place is silly. It's a complete waste of money, but Arthur Blank can do what he wants with his money, with his billions. But at the very least, they sort of had a plan, and now maybe their things will be quite promising with the new quarterback. Maybe it'll give them a new lease of life from next season. For Seattle, they've never kind of had a plan, and that's the point I agree with them. They don't have a plan. The plan is just to say, is there somebody here? No. Next year then. And then they get to next year, it's like, is there anything? No. Next year then. And it's like, well, how much longer can you do that? And I don't know. I would say not much longer. Baylor says Geno isn't making that throw that Sam Darnold made. I'm guessing he means the last touchdown there.
I think that's probably harsh. I think Geno could definitely make that throw. It was also a great throw from Darnold. I don't think we need to denigrate Geno for like Geno's made some great throws. Like the drive for Smith and Jigba's touchdown. We went 5 for 5. There were 5 brilliant throws. Like for all, and that's why I appreciate this show a lot, because I think we've been able to situate ourselves with the Geno discussion quite sensibly. That we feel like we know what he is, but we've been more than effusive of Geno when he's deserved it. And I think today there were times where he looked like a great quarterback. Put it on the screen. Time's running out for JS, says Slacker Hero. His trades and moves are looking bad.
The offensive line is a mess and has been for a long time. That's on him. Free agency is always bad on him. I mean, look, I think some of his trades, I mean, look, we all know what we all think of that trade, the big trade that he made with Jamal Adams. I don't think his trades this year have looked bad. Ernest Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, whatever he's called, has been okay. I don't think there's an issue there. It's the free agency is a big problem though, Adam. He's been bad at free agency since he peaked at Bennett and Averill, and they've not had anything since. They've not been able to capture anything close to anything like that. And not that you'd ever expect to recapture that, but they've not had any successes in free agency. And that's a problem when you are also not having any successes in the draft. Like, when's the last time they found a fifth rounder who was legitimately amazing? Because Tariq Woolen isn't. When's the last time they found a star, in round 3? When's the last time they even found a freaking center or a guard who can start and just be competent for a long time? I mean, maybe they did find one in Damian Lewis, but then they started fanning about moving him to left guard so they could squeeze great Gabe Jackson in at right guard, and then wrecked his Seahawks career. Now he's gone to Carolina and he's doing okay. So I don't know. I mean, it's just it's frustrating, Adam. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stealing someone else's point here, but I'm hesitant to give Schneider too much credit for the in-season trades to cover up mistakes that he's made in the off-season. Ernest Jones, great, but you needed him because your linebacker situation in the off-season was a disaster. So, well done for clearing up your own mess, but stop making the mess in the first place would be quite nice.
Robert says Reek Woolen is definitely a donkey. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Roy says we start slow. Smith has to get us back into it. He won't. He is a backup. Whereas number 14, we need a clutch play. Opposition only need 30 seconds to score. Thank you for that, Roy. All Pro Seahawks says, I don't think I can watch another game with Grubb, a defensive coordinator. There'll be a few people saying that. You all will still watch the game next week, but I will phrase it this way. I don't want to watch him, the offensive coordinator, next season. I just don't think time's going to be a healer with him. I just don't think it's a time thing. I don't think it's going to be, with another year's experience. We need a play caller who knows how to call plays in the NFL. It's as simple as that. Jeffrey says, we saw the deficiencies of Sam. When we got to him, I'd be concerned if I was one of the teams vying for him this offseason, the seeing ghosts guy. I disagree with that, Jeffrey. I have to say thank you for the super chat. And, he's saying there that we saw the deficiencies of Sam Darnold when the Seahawks created pressure there, Adam. I thought he played bloody brilliantly, given that they hit him all over the place. He got cuts on his legs. They hammered him. The hit from Murphy definitely, he felt that. The next play, he got up and threw a bloody touchdown. There was one play through to Justin Jefferson who was wide open, and he threw it to him, and he got absolutely leveled, but still completed the pass. If anything, I thought that was a sign of progress from Sam Darnold today, that he's not seeing the ghosts anymore, that actually can handle the pressure, stand in the pocket, and deliver a good football.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Dan Orlovsky did a thing on Geno Smith a couple of weeks ago, and he was showing how Geno's eyes are always downfield. He's always ready to make a throw because he's always looking at what's going on, and he's not feeling that pressure from the outside. And that's a really amazing trait to have, obviously. And I've started trying to watch that in other quarterbacks and seeing, well, if Geno's the barometer on that, like, where do you stand as another quarterback? And I thought Donald was brilliant at that today. I thought his movement in the pocket was superb. He didn't seem flustered. For a guy that famously did have that see and ghost stuff, I thought he led that team beautifully. And the touchdown to Jefferson at the end kind of put a bow on that, really. Yeah, good movement in the pocket, stepped up, made the throw. I thought he was really impressive. Not that I would necessarily want to spend $60 million on him, but just assessing him for what I've watched today, I thought he played great.
I mean, it's hard because I thought he played great today, and he's now 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions for the season, and he's he leads some categories that are quite important. And if you said Sam Darnold for a Baker Mayfield contract to see if he can build on this, and then go and get a coordinator who can work the same offense that they're running in Minnesota. I can't say that I'd be totally against that. I also can't say that I would definitely imagine that's going to be a lot better until you do fix other aspects of the offense, such as the offensive line. I also can't say that it would have me sort of racing to the television for week 1 next season with mass anticipation of watching the Sam Darnold-led Seahawks. But he is younger, and maybe he is a victim of playing for the Jets and the Panthers before then finding somewhere with competency. In the Niners last year and now the Vikings this year. Maybe that's just what he needed. Maybe he is a player who was worthy of the 3rd overall pick in 2018, who everybody thought was going to be a good player. And he just needed that right home. But I'm telling you now, like, if he's out of Minnesota, there's going to be a lot of teams that are thinking, what choice have we got but to try and pay this guy? Because the alternatives aren't there. Mikkel Cam 10 says, John Schneider is and has been part of the problem for a good 9 years. He truly is the cancer of this team. How much longer till Jody or Bert have had enough of him? Happy holidays, guys. I mean, I don't think they fired Pete Carroll and then let John Schneider pick the replacement to fire him a year later. But I would not be surprised if ownership was saying, look, John, you've got to sort some things out here. And it won't just be a defensive line conversation. Jan says, I really hope the front office will be aggressive this offseason. New OC, spend significant resources on the offensive line, implement the run game, and sadly, I think the team is still too far away from being good to keep Metcalf. Jan, thank you for that. Really appreciate it. We've got 3 more of these.
Rob, just pull that up again. That super chat from Jan.
There you go.
How many years do you reckon this could have been a relevant super chat in?
I really hope the front office will be aggressive this offseason. New OC. Well, yeah, I mean, that's been a talking point a couple of times. Spend significant resources on the O-line. That's like an every year thing. Implement the run game. Yep, we've been saying that for years. Yeah, I mean, they could have said that for about 5 years. Yeah,
it's annoying, isn't it? It's really annoying.
In fact, I probably could have said that for 8 years.
It's just not acceptable.
No.
Like, we're not trying to make like hot takes or make these wild assertions off one game that we've lost, which is annoying. But you shouldn't be able to look at an issue and wonder what year you're reading it in across that span of time.
Here's a question.
It's annoying.
Here's a question for you. They're going to find it really annoying. If you could go back in time now, you fired John Schneider as well as Pete Carroll, but the person they appoint to run this franchise is the one person that you didn't want them to hire in Harbaugh. And he comes in and he can bring the whole Jim Harbaugh thing to Seattle. His GM, his way of doing everything. It's the Harbaugh Seahawks from now on. If you were given that choice now or to just have what they've got instead, what would you rather have?
Oof. I mean, I am in an all-time funk when it comes to the sporting teams that I hold dear to my heart at the moment. So I think I might be swayed because being given a shred of pleasure is better than no pleasure at the moment. So the malaise at Tottenham might make me more sympathetic to the Harbaugh situation. I think the ultimate point is that Schneider and Carroll should have gone at the same time for me. And I just think it should have been a clean slate, clean sweep. However that manifested itself. And again, we talk about, take a swing and it might be disaster, it might be good, it might be bad. Like even Mike McDonald, this is not his fault in the slightest, but he's not like an exciting bloke, is he? Like to have when the Lions hired Dan Campbell, you knew something was going to happen, whether it was a disaster or how it's turned out. Now, look, no one wants a disaster, but when McDonald was hired and he's just like a nice guy, well-spoken, obviously knows what he's doing, and I am 100% behind the appointment. Even that wasn't the kind of thing that he's not box office, is he? And if we talk about the same thing about the players, they haven't even got box office coaching, which maybe just also leads to
what's exciting about Seattle?
No,
what's
nothing.
Exciting about the Seahawks?
You don't have to be exciting. You can just be functional and functionally brilliant, but he wasn't. No, but they're not. And he's not a guy that's going to, pull you in with his press conference, be like, oh my God, I'm going to get behind that guy and defend him with my life as a fan. He's just not.
No. And I think that's the thing was in the first 2 years of Carroll, like I come with the 2011, like there was a lot of people going, this guy's not going to work. Like this has not worked. It's a disaster. They were crap for a period. And then it turned. But before that, there was a lot of that talk. But even then you thought, yeah, but it's Pete Carroll. It's Pete Carroll. Like he's the USC guy. Like you've got to give him more time than this to turn it around. Like look what he did at USC, and there was a bit of magic with him, and then he did turn it around, and they obviously had the great run and won a Super Bowl. It's harder to sort of like if we're sat here in 2 years' time and the Seahawks are still 9-8, and they're not noticeably progressed. I don't think it'll just be John Schneider who's under pressure. I don't think people will be going to bat for McDonald. They'll just go, well, clean sweep. But I do think, look, I know there's more people today, and this will happen in the next few days, calling for Schneider's head. I think if you're hoping that's going to happen in the next 3 weeks, I don't think that's going to happen.
No chance.
No. You're going to have to wait at least one more year to have that as a realistic conversation. Sean says, you can see it on MM's face, the offense and Geno kill him. Grubb and Dirty will be gone. I tell you, Dirty won't be gone, Sean. Like Mike McDonald said, he said he was fantastic the week, and that in fact he then went back on that, went actually no, he's useless because we're desperate to keep hold of him. We don't want him to. I don't think you speak like that if you're going to fire the guy. So I don't think he will be going anywhere unless there's like a promotion or something that he takes. So and it's hard to know what that would be. So I don't think he's going anywhere, but I think Grubb's a goner. Bring in Wink and Pep Hamilton and build up the Harbour way. I think Pep Hamilton might be the most overrated coach that's ever been. But Wink Martindale, listen, I seem to, I don't know if it was Jeff who said this on one stream. I think there was some thought that they don't want big personality coaches, like being the main voice, because Mike McDonald is not a very experienced coach. I don't think they wanted somebody that was going to overshadow everybody and drown everything out. And Wink Martindale is like larger than life. He's from like I don't know if this is the perfect comparison, but he's kind of like like a Ryan brother in that regard. And I don't think that's what they wanted. Glenn says there is no long-term plan for a quarterback. No, there is not, Glenn. I'm afraid you're correct on that. Thank you for the super chat. And Slacker Hero says, bad QB draft, but anyone realistic? Jalen Milroe. He can't throw. Like he throws it downfield.
Other than that, Rob.
He's a great running back, Like, listen, he's just not taking the development. He's got a big arm and he can run. But when I was talking to a former GM a few months ago, and what does he do when he scouts quarterbacks? He says, I just watch every third down throw they ever play. That's what he wants. Like, can you convert a third down? Any situation? How are you on third down? How are you in the huddle? That's what he's looking for. And if you said to me, how is Jalen Milroe going to deal with 3rd and 8 in the NFL? I'd say, well, unless he can find the edge and run for it, probably not very well. That's part of the problem. But then I look around, like people will say, what about Will Howard? No, like we've seen 2 years of Will Howard. He's a day 3 pick. You can bring him in and develop him. I'm not saying he's totally not going to work out, but it's hard to sort of think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. Like I don't think Quinn Ewers has just not had a good year. Obviously very talented, but he just can't put it together. So it's so hard, that's why you kind of think, well, look, Sam Darnold was the 3rd overall pick for a reason 6 years ago. Maybe you go in that direction, or maybe you just sort of say, oh, we'll just kick things can down the road in front of the year. Here's another for Adam. We've just had another super chat, Quinn, so I'll finish with that. But here's another question for you. What if they just say, do you know what? We can't sort the quarterback position out. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a couple of offensive linemen, one way or another, draft, free agency, whatever. And actually, do you know what our main focus is going to be on top of the offensive line? It's getting even better on defense. We're going to try and make Mike McDonald the best, maybe the first round pick is on the defense. We're going to try and make Mike McDonald's unit the best defense in the NFL. What if they set that as a target, as long as some improvements on the offensive line as far as they can for next offseason? If that's their plan and they come back next year, 1, does that improve anything? 2, does it engage you anymore? 3, is it more realistic than us sitting here talking about this, that, and the other, massive changes to the offense if they can't make them?
If you don't think the Seahawks can win the Super Bowl next year, then I would go with that as a plan that at least, is it easier to find one position, quarterback, than it is to find, how many do you reckon they need now to be a Super Bowl winning caliber team? 7 or 8 at this stage? So, at least it would be a policy. And I am very happy to see the team live or die by having a very clear, coherent plan to get there. And if that plan is we're going to build our team up and then we're going to try and get our quarterback, at least it is a plan. What would you say is the plan for roster construction right now? Other than get good players.
Okay. What I think the plan is they draft the best player available.
Yeah. But that's not a policy.
No.
That's just a coconut shy.
It is, but let's also accept that there's a lot of people who think that's what you should always do.
Mm-hmm.
But and I don't have a problem with that. But you have to do that after a great free agency then. So you have to, the best player available thing works if you solve your needs in free agency. And year after year, Seattle are not solving their needs in free agency. Laken Tomlinson as your starting left guard is not solving that. So then you go into the draft needing a guard. Like you lose Damian Lewis and you lose Phil Haynes. Okay, whatever, one slightly different scenario than the other. But then you sort of go, you sign one player in Laken Tomlinson, and then you go into the draft with a honking need and draft a player who's not even your third string guard now. Sorry, not even your second string guard, it's your third string guard. And this is just not good process. So that's the problem. And look, do you know what's going to set, because people are saying in the comments now, like, oh, Schneider loves Ewers. And do you know what? I think Schneider might like Quinn Ewers still, despite the season he's had. Do you know what? Well, as much as I want the Seahawks to invest in a quarterback at a minute, do you know what? If they draft Quinn Ewers, it's going to be an absolute nightmare because it's going to be the next thing that this fan base just tears itself apart over. Because there are already some sort of strong voices within Seahawks Twitter who are like visibly opposed to, like Ewers has got this weird, not within the Seahawks fan base, I'm talking about outside of it, like this weird online hatred. And he's had a crap season. Like there's no getting away from it. It's been banged up, not played well. But it's like proper like anti-Ewers thing going on. And if the Seahawks draft him, oh my God, it might end my energy for this. Like, and I say that as somebody who's desperate for them to invest in a quarterback and get it right and all of that. So just on this, before we get to the final super chat, Mr. T, but it's not a super chat, but I wanted to put it up. Rob, they said the same about Hurts that they did about Milroe. Well, not necessarily, because Jalen Hurts was not the athlete that Jalen Milroe is. He could run around a little bit. He was a much more accomplished thrower. Like Hurts, let me have a look at like Jalen Hurts college stats, and let me have a look at this. So I've got Jalen Hurts' college stats up now. I know that Jalen Milroe threw 15 touchdowns this year. So in his final year with Oklahoma, he threw 32 touchdowns. That's twice as many as Jalen Milroe. So he threw 32 touchdowns and he ran for 20. I mean, he had a 50 touchdown season. Like that, Jalen Milroe did not have that. So I kind of see the point you're trying to make, but it's it's a very different final season. And I don't even know if Jalen Milroe is going to declare. Mike says, Darnold played solid, but it's obvious how good Kevin is at making his job easy. Our O-line looked better if we had someone like KM working with Geno. I'm curious how much better our offense would be. Yeah, I still think, Adam, maybe this is a good point to leave it. I still think that even if you had that, Geno would be a little bit better some of the time, but would still make the mistakes that he does.
I mean, what I would say is that all of the great teams in the NFL right now have some sort of revolutionary offensive mind driving the ship. whether that's the offensive coordinator and someone like a Ben Johnson, or the head coach is offensive minded. And I don't think it's being revisionist to say that we did say during the hire process that, if you take a defensive head coach, fine, then you've got to go out and find the right offensive coordinator to make it all work. And it does feel like these offensive coordinators are the guys that are making an awful lot of things tick in the NFL right now. Now, look, Bobby Slowick doesn't appear to have look like the best choice for head coach, and fine. But if you could have got Ben Johnson, what would the team look like now offensively? They might be a completely different team. And that was always going to be the risk they took in hiring a defensive guy. And if they've got to go and get another offensive coordinator, you're not back to square one, but it feels like another reset. And I think that's something that is worth flagging, if not be concerned by.
We all just need, this is what my sort of plea to the Seahawks franchise. We need a reason to be excited. Now, I think our minds were occupied last offseason because coaching changed for the first time since 2010. There was not even a proper search back then. In fact, when Holmgren left, there was no search. It was just Jim Moore had already been anointed as the successor. And then when Moore left, it was just Pete Carroll came in and that was it. So for the first time, we had a very interesting, quite lengthy debate for about a month as to who was going to replace Pete Carroll. And that was somewhere occupied our minds. And then you have the coaching changes. And then you sort of look forward to what's this going to look like? How different is it going to be? How much better can these players be with different coaches? What are they going to do in the draft? Blah, 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 blah. And then you get to the offseason and you're okay. We're now a year on and they're 8-7 and staring at a very similar record. You're not going to have any of that this offseason. Like when the season finishes, and assuming the Seahawks don't make the playoffs, which is incredibly likely now, you are not going to have any of those things to occupy people's minds. You have got to generate some excitement. You've got to show you mean business. Your words have got to be right. Your actions have got to be right. You've got to do the right things in free agency, and you've got to have the right kind of draft. And then after that draft, you have to have people excited, energized, engaged again, because the franchise is going a bit flat. Like that's why people are selling the tickets. That's why they're 3-6 at home. That's why that's not why they're 3-6 at home. It's just that adds to the malaise though of a flat franchise. It's a bit of it's like a wet fart at the minute. Like, come on, like you've got to get it going again. Like this is a franchise that claims it wants to be like there every year. Come on, let's do this. And you're not there at the minute. You've got to do something. You've got to get people going. And that's more than just a nudge and a hurdle. It can't be Paul Collingwood coming to the crease looking to get 50 off 120 deliveries. Only people in England will know what the I'm going on about there. But that's what it can't be. It's got to be Kevin Peterson lashing 70 off 70. Again, you won't know what any of that means. Adam knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's got to be exciting and energizing again. And you can't just keep nudging and nerdling and hoping to maneuver your way to 10 wins instead of 9. Like it needs to be bigger. I want to see a big, bold offseason. I want to see a game-changing offseason. And I am fully aware of how difficult that is to create, and that you can easily fall flat in your face doing that. But I'm past caring, Adam. This is an entertainment industry. I want to be entertained.
Yeah, I've said all season, the barometer for my year will be what our attitude is like on the stream of the final game of the year. And this kind of could be that, because I don't know when the Rams play the Cardinals, if that's before our game against the Bears or afterwards. But to all intents and purposes, the Rams have got a bit of a doddle to knock us out the playoffs now. So this is sort of part A of the end of season review. And I feel flat as a pancake. Which is a shame, because I could have accepted an off season. I said that from minute one. I could accept a bad season if we ended it on a high, looking to progress into next year. And I just don't think we're there at all at the moment.
One final super chat for now. Brett says there seems to be no more Hasselbecks anymore in today's college football NFL landscape. Late round guys who are starters with time. The game has changed in a way that erodes classic QB skills. Purdy, more system. And it's a great point, Brett. I mean, look, to go back to Jalen Milroe very quickly, if you sort of believe, well, look, the athleticism and the arm warrants some consideration because athletically and physically he is a difference maker and he's got a quality with his running that can be electric, maybe you've got a point. Maybe you take the chance on that. But my word, it's such a gap. I do think you have to be good in the pocket. I do think you have to have that a bit that like Lamar Jackson can still throw a pass from the pocket. Like there are quarterbacks out there who are very, very dynamic in many, many ways. Josh Allen, incredibly creative. Even Burrow's got some creativity to them, but they can make a big play in the big down on 3rd and 8 from the pocket. And that's kind of like, can someone like Milroe do that? Maybe he can. Maybe you can convince yourself that he can, and he's got the X factor skills. And easily, you can imagine in 2 or 3 years' time, you think, how did we sleep on this guy? Because look at the physical talent, and he's a great guy, and he's a good leader. But it's just like, you just wanted to see so much more from him as a passer. And that's just the quarterback position. The O-line still needs work. The defense still needs pieces. We're an hour and 35 into the stream, Adam, and I feel like
we're going all night. Someone's going to just drop another super chat in, just keep us going all night.
I'll give someone a minute to send another super chat in. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. Like people are saying now, Milroe could be Richardson, and he is. But do you know what? The funny thing is I'm watching Anthony Richardson today, and I'm thinking, oh, that's a terrible pass. That's a terrible pass. And then I'm thinking, oh, but that's a really good run. That's a really good run. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know. Like, can that guy plow on? Can he develop in a year or two like Josh Allen did? Or is he just always going to be like this? So, is that the worst thing in the world to have an Anthony Richardson that you could at least hold out a bit of hope could turn into something? Is that better hope than just not doing anything at the position? I don't know. But
can the team afford to pay Geno Smith $42 million next year? Like actually afford to do it?
Oh, look, they can afford to do it. It probably means cutting other players, quite a few players, and having a few holes to fill. It probably means not paying DK Metcalf. I mean, look, they can pay Geno Smith that money, but they can't. Like they just can't. You can't, and they won't. I
do think that both sides are going to have very different views on their value in contract negotiations.
Yeah, I know, and they definitely will, Adam. But if Geno Smith goes in there and goes, oh, well, yeah, you know what? We threw this many yards and we did all this, and look, PFF has us as the 8th best quarterback, and and the Seahawks will go, yeah, and you threw as many interceptions in the red zone as Jameis Winston. You threw X number of interceptions. Your QBR is like 22nd or something. Your quarterback rating's like 25th. Like no, you're not having that money. Like so there's two options for you. Like you either leave and then go and test the market, and that I don't think there'd be a huge market for him. I don't think he would get a better contract elsewhere, or you can do a deal with us and you come to a compromise. And I do, if I had to put money on it, that's what I think will happen. But it doesn't excite me.
No.
And it, I don't know. I wonder how people will react to that when that happens, because there'll still be people shouting he needs to get $40 million like they did 2 years ago or 18 months ago when he got a contract and they thought he was going to get franchise tagged or they was going to get the franchise amount. He ended up signing for something like $25 million a year. So it's just, I just want the Seahawks to be better. I want them to be more exciting. I want to feel optimism for the future as opposed to just, that's the thing, is you just want to feel like there's a chance, like next year could be the year or the year after next could be the year. Instead, it just feels like the next year could be the same as this, and the year after could be the same as this. I just want to break out of this 9-8, 9-8, 9-8. I've had enough of it.
It's a deluxe Jeff Fisher team at the moment.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is no place to be.
I agree, and we gave it a minute. And no other super chats came in, Adam. So I can only say that I'm especially grateful for you giving up an hour and 40 of your night.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Especially at 2:20 a.m. And that, however bad you guys feel, it's 2:20 a.m. here. My goodness. Right. Thank you to everybody who sent the super chats. Crazy number of super chats. Great viewing figures all the way through this. So I appreciate everybody for sticking with us. If I can please ask you a favor, look, it's nearly Christmas. It's the 23rd of December where we are. So if you want to do me a Christmas gift favor, subscribe to the channel. Let's try and push it upwards towards 10,000. Please give the video a like. Please leave a comment in the comment section. Please check out SeahawksTrackBlog.com. That's all I ask for Christmas. I'd really, really appreciate that. But thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody who has followed the channel and followed the blog throughout. And I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas if you are, in fact, celebrating this week. And we're back next week. When are they playing, Adam? It's like Boxing Day night, isn't it? Oh, my God. It's another late night, isn't it?
Boxing Day? It can't be Boxing Day. That's Thursday.
Yeah, they're playing Thursday. They're playing like 1:20 a.m. on Friday morning, yeah.
Oh,
I'm sure they are. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. I know. Your reaction matches, man. Let me confirm that. So yeah, 1:15 a.m. Friday, the 27th of December. So it's Boxing Day night. Oh,
that's so close.
Staying up all night to watch the Seahawks play the Bears. Anyway, I'm sure that some people may not do that, though I am glutton for punishment and will. So for those of you who will be there, I'll see you Boxing Day. Adam, I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
And some absolutely fantastic analysis as always. And
can I just chip in, Rob? I don't know if you'd mind me just sharing this, but we interviewed on my podcast, the Pedestrian Pod, Adam Amin, who was the commentator for Fox last week. It wasn't that much of like a preview show. It was more generic stuff. So if any interest, give that a check. And sorry for plugging my own thing on your show, Rob. Thank you for that.
Adam, you are absolutely more than entitled to do that. I should have mentioned it myself because I listened to the episode and I thought it was fantastic. I really like Adam. It was a shame I didn't get to listen to his broadcast today because I was doing it for the radio. But I think he's fantastic. And I thought it was a great listen and unbelievable job just getting the quality of the guests that you do. So everybody listening to this should go and check that out when you've got a spare moment. We did get one last super chat from Baller. Keep it going. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas, everybody. See you Boxing Day.